In the icy wilds of Alaska, where silence stretches endlessly across frozen rivers and wind-blown tundra, something watches. Something old, something hidden. Yupik people tell of the Ircenrraat, beings who are quite not human, not quite spirit, but something in between. The Urchinrraat are supernatural entities from the folklore of the Yupik people of southwestern Alaska. Their name translates roughly to those who live outside, which refers not just to their physical distance from human villages, but also to their spiritual otherness. They are believed to inhabit a parallel world, slipping in and out of ours. These beings are often described as tricksters, mimics, hunters, and even abductors. They're feared, respected, and sometimes even pitied, because while they are dangerous, they are part of a natural world that demands reverence. My name is Kayla.
My name is Xenu.
And we are Cauldron
Cauldron
Convos,
Convos.
and we didn't set up the smoke machine, but just pretend it's smoky in here. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe because we post paranormal content, we post shorts, and we also live stream multiple times a week. So if you want to be a part of this urban legend, true crime, paranormal community, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's get back to the video. So Xenu, do you want to give a little bit of any type of background on the Urchinrraat before we go into it, or just dive in?
I saw them I was doom scrolling on one of the apps. I came across a video about them, and it just seemed so creepy. And then I went to go onto YouTube to see if there were any more videos that I could watch, and there was nothing. So I was like, we must be pioneers.
We must.
So that's where we are today. We are pioneers in the space of the Urchinrraat.
All right, so let's get into the physical characteristics of the Urchinrraat. What makes them so terrifying? What do they look like, these little Urchinrraats? Urchinrraats.
So coming across any sort of humanoid in the woods is quite terrifying, especially if it's like a grown man. But when it comes to a child, you don't really know what to do. Do you intervene? Do you try to find help or rescue them? But in this case, it's a little bit more creepy.
Yes, and they're 2 to 3 feet tall, and people describe their appearance as kind of human-like, but also a little animal-like, depending on the legend that you hear.
Also depends what you microdosed with before you went on your hike.
Yes, and they're also said to wear traditional Yupik clothing, often with furs, parkas, and hunting gear, which helps them blend in with wilderness surroundings.
Perhaps when you see one, you're like, oh, it's just one of those little children wandered off from their little igloo somewhere around here.
They look like labubus. Kind of. Lafufu, whatever. Labubu, lafufu. You're the off-brand lafufu. Labubu, I mean.
They are lafufus.
They are lafufus. So even though they look like children, they're small, 2 to 3 feet tall, they're actually super strong and fast, which is, again, more terrifying.
It kind of reminds me of that movie, The Orphan. They adopt a child that's actually a grown woman.
Yeah, like the Natalie Grace Rose.
Yeah, it's a child with full man strength. So that's pretty terrifying.
They're also independent and they live in their own communities. They hunt, they fish, they craft, much like humans, but they're unseen. Sometimes they're known to just observe humans from afar, like they're peeking through the woods looking at you while you're taking a pee. But other times they're also known to interact with humans. So they'll go up and start talking. Sometimes they're actually kind of helpful, but often more they instill confusion, mischief, or danger.
They often remind me of skinwalkers, the way, in the stories you read about them and hear about them, they'll try to lure you into the woods using a loved one's voice, or, it's just a child calling for help. That's terrifying.
Or what about those, not sirens, but there's like the Arctic version of a siren in Alaska. They're, they sing sweet songs and lure you in too. So a common, I guess, trope in the paranormal creatures, urban legends, whatever, is, someone tricking you into something.
A tricksy gypsy, the Arctic tricksy gypsy.
To continue on with their appearance, their ears might be sharp and pointed like those of foxes or wolves or Xenu. Ha, loser. And their eyes might be glowing or reflective like those of owls, suggesting a mystical quality.
The photos of them that scare me the most are the ones of hikers in the dark, and they're just little beady eyes in the corner with like a parka on. Like, good God.
And you're like, bro, I didn't know you were my 7th grade boyfriend. Get out of here.
What?
Parka, winter break. Goes way back. In some stories, they're believed to be spirits of animals or nature itself, embodying the characteristics of certain animals.
Just a note on the pronunciation. Google says Ikchinhut. Another Google site says Urchinrraat. I don't know.
I prefer Urchinrraat. It's like a little rat. Get over here, little Urchinrraat.
I'd prefer if they just told me what's more offensive and we would use that, but they won't.
Okay, let's not. Anyway, for example, some Ircenrraat are said to be able to transform into birds, foxes, or other animals. Shout out to our other podcast on shapeshifters. Make sure to watch that video on shapeshifters. It's great. But Ircenrraat as shapeshifters allows them to move through the world undetected or to escape danger. And obviously they have some human-like qualities because we said they kind of look like children. In some versions of the myths, they're described as having human-like faces, but their hands and feet, some people are going to love this one, might be disproportionately large, perhaps reflecting their supernatural connection to the earth or their ability to move through nature in unique ways, like in Lord of the Rings, hobbits.
Yeah, you could actually call it an adaptation for survival. You know, their small stature and their animal features perhaps probably help them, other than being magic, help them live in the woods in Alaska.
Yeah, my dad always used to tell me that I had big feet and that was good, that I could play sports better than other people.
Button.
One... Oh, yeah. What, really?
Yeah, let's just not talk about the size of your dogs.
Okay, so let's get into the behavior and personality. Let's see you see a child in the woods, in the tundra. For some reason, you're there, and there's a child there as well. How do you know, besides its physical appearance, if it's an Ircenrraat or if it's actually a kid? So their behavior and personality are a bit different than your typical American child. Their behavior is complex as they embody both the playful nature of tricksters and the powerful, sometimes dangerous aspects of nature. They are characterized by their unpredictability, much like the forces of nature that they represent.
Now, it's quite scary because oftentimes the tricks they play on you aren't very fun tricks. It's not like, haha, I pantsed you, or I tied your shoes together. It's, I'm going to steal your sleeping bag, or I'm going to hide your food tonight.
They should do like Naked and Afraid, but Ircenrraat version.
Yeah, and oftentimes, you know, their behavior will reflect directly the challenges that you are facing. So say you're really hungry, you only have a certain amount of food. Well, guess what? They're going to take your food. They'll really only mess with you if you're disrespecting the land, or even if you're just passing through and you just happen to upon their camp.
Yeah.
Like any paranormal entity, they have the ability to mess with your mind. And more than just, you know, tricking you like, haha, I made you look. It's more, we're going to screw with your time and your perception of time.
Yeah, so sometimes travelers think that they're walking for hours when in reality only minutes have passed somehow. Are they Father Time and
Sounds like
Ircenrraat
DMT,
in one?
bro.
What is going on? Or they make people believe that they're lost when they're actually not lost. The Ircenrraat are also described as vengeful if they are wronged. Like you said before, a person who disrespects the land or acts selfishly may provoke their wrath.
For instance, if a hunter disregards traditional customs or takes more than needed, you know, this might invoke an interaction with the Ircenrraat. And, you know, that just sounds like a Hollywood plot right there. That sounds like a great movie.
Yeah.
That sounds like a horror movie I would watch.
How exactly do they lure people into them, though? One, they mimic voices. They'll mimic the voice of someone you love, aka your history teacher from high school, a sibling, a parent. Okay. That was a joke.
What's the history teacher?
Like
that's not going to lure me in. That's going to draw me the other way.
I'm saying, like I do. Maybe I liked mine. Many who follow their voice become disoriented, vanish, or return hours, even days later, and returning with no memory of where they've been at all.
That sounds horrifying. Can you imagine you just are late to your campsite and everyone's like, oh, where were you? I was following someone's voice.
For hours.
My mom was in the woods. I swear. Something else that they have been reported to do is creating visual illusions. People have reported seeing entire villages, houses, or even lights in the distance to only walk towards them to find nothing but frozen wilderness, like a mirage almost. Others see trails that endlessly loop, even if they were just on a clear path. Oftentimes, people are trying to make sense of this, like, oh, what's going on here? You know, I think this is like almost an interdimensional human being.
Yeah, but basically their world is somehow out of sync with ours. So that's, I think, what you were saying about it being in a different dimension or reality or whatever. They don't follow the laws of our physical world. So this is kind of definitely a paranormal entity we're talking about. They can walk through solid barriers, they can vanish into thin air, and they can manipulate perception and time. And people who have encountered them often report missing time, memory gaps, chronic nightmares, and a feeling of being watched, even for days afterward. Like,
this reminds me of Bigfoot being an interdimensional human being, or interdimensional being, rather. You know,
Is
that's
he?
well, that's a theory that people talk
Theory.
about. He's an alien. So how do we avoid these guys, Kayla?
I would never be out walking in the tundra or walking, period. Especially not hiking a trail, camping. But if you are more adventurous than I am, if you have more mental clarity and health than I do, well, I'll tell you. Never travel alone, but this is just a good practice to go by, especially at night or in sacred areas specifically, because they do linger in more sacred areas. Don't whistle in the wilderness. It's said to call them, and once they hear you, they might follow you. Good thing I still can't whistle.
I would be
Almost 30
screwed.
years
I
old.
almost whistle all the time when I'm by myself.
Okay, there's one thing worse than people who don't know how to whistle. People who don't know how to stop whistling.
Whistling Willie. Ignore strange voices calling your name. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't tell you this. Just if someone's calling your name in the woods and you don't know who it is, or even if you know who it is and they shouldn't be there, like, Ma died 10 years ago. Why is she calling my name? Don't go. Come on, guys.
No,
Just go.
I'm just kidding.
They're not going to kill you. Maybe they'll eat you.
Some people say that saying their name out loud can draw their attention. So don't taunt them. Don't say their name. They're going to come for you. And leave small offerings if you want to be nice and get on their good side. Bits of food or carved tokens can appease them or grant safe passage for you.
Yeah, and stay away from certain places. If there are known disappearances, don't go there by yourself. You're better than that. Don't go towards lights that you see if you're not expecting to see lights. And if you feel weird, there's probably something weird going on. So get out of there.
Get out of there.
I mean,
That was
something
crazy, that noise.
something weird is going on with you if you're in the woods in Alaska alone at night. I have
Yeah.
nothing to say. You deserve it. Besides the outdoors boy guy. I love you outdoors boys.
So in many ways, the Ircenrraat are a manifestation of the deep connection that Alaskan native cultures have with the land and the creatures who inhabit it. Their role goes beyond that of simple mythological beings. They are integral to understanding the natural world and its spiritual significance. In Alaskan native traditions, animism, the belief that all natural things, including animals, plants, rocks, and elements, have a spiritual essence, is central. The Ircenrraat, are spirits tied to the natural world, are seen as intermediaries between humans and the spiritual forces of the earth. These beings are often associated with sacred or liminal places, those areas that are neither fully human nor fully wild.
Some myths suggest that the Ircenrraat are not just physical beings, but also symbolic of natural forces like the wind, the weather, and changing of the seasons. To honor the Ircenrraat and nature, it might be common for hunters to give a portion of their catch to the land or to offer rituals that ask for permission from the spirits of the animals that they hunt.
While many of the stories about Ircenrraat are shared among Alaskan native groups, the characteristics and specific details vary depending on the culture and region that you're talking to or in. Each community has its unique take on the little people, though the core themes of respect, nature, and supernatural are constant across all of them. So we have northern Alaska, the Inupiat people. The Ircenrraat are often portrayed as tricksters who live in the harsh Arctic environment. But southwest Alaska, or Aleut and Yupik, they appear similarly, but they also take on additional characteristics that the northern Alaskans don't really associate with them. These beings may also influence weather patterns or the movement of sea creatures according to their culture.
So I think, these guys have big cultural importance and they leave a long legacy. Something when you're living in Alaska, survival and resource management is very important. And in native cultures, especially for those living in this environment, resources are precious and must be managed carefully. These stories of the Ircenrraat are passed on from elders to children, and children, when they become elders, to more children. And that's how these stories really live on. And beyond just teaching survival skills to these children, these stories help people respect nature and respect the land that they are taking care of.
Compared to other mythological creatures in other cultures, they are kind of similar to fairies or leprechauns in Celtic culture. Like the Ircenrraat, many European traditions feature little beings who act as protectors to the land. And indigenous North American folklore, the concept of small magical beings or spirits can also be found in many other Native American tribes. And honestly, a ton of other cultures has this idea of this small creature that protects the land, but also is a little bit mischievous and will be vengeful if need be.
And something that I found interesting is that there's really a lack of modern interpretations of these people. There are no movies really. There's a couple books about them, but I think they're really lacking the exposure and cultural exposure that they deserve.
And some people believe that they possess the ability to influence or even possess people, which is taking an even crazier, more evil, darker take, especially if someone is spiritually weak, ill, or disrespectful of nature. So just don't do it.
So here are some real stories and encounters. So the first one is called The Vanishing Hunter. The Yupik man went hunting, and he was followed by what he thought was his cousin's voice into the woods. He vanished for 3 days, and when he returned, he had no memory of where he had been, only the sound of the drum beating in the distance. Another one is called The Underground Home. A woman claimed that as a child, she was taken into the underground home by small people who treated her kindly and gave her food and showed her strange tools. She was gone for a day, but believed it was only an hour.
The disappearance of a child is another story about the Ircenrraat. A small boy disappeared near the edge of his village. He was never found. Elders whispered that the Ircenrraat had taken him and the area was avoided for decades. Lastly, we just wanted to go on Reddit and read a story, actually specifically it's in the r/Alaska subreddit, which is kind of interesting. It's not really in paranormal or Native American legends or anything like that. It's specifically just Alaska in general. Someone asked, anyone with first-hand encounters with Ircenrraat? I've heard many stories, but I haven't seen one myself. I have family that have seen them. When I was young, my uncle and I were out and he found a stone bowl. He handed it to me and I held onto it until we were home by boat. I put it down briefly to pee, and when I went to grab it, it was gone. We looked for it for what felt like hours, but could never find it. Someone else commented, I do not think you are supposed to talk about them. Yupik similarly has one that is Jinsiark, so I don't know if that's specifically the name that they use for them. But here is another comment. There are supposed to be little people all along the Yukon. I've heard of little people my whole life and would like to see some. I haven't been to any Yukon villages since I was little. I've heard stories they hang around the old school at Emo. There's 2 kinds, ones that are mischief and bad and one that predict good news. I have heard little people stories from elders that grew up in Utqiagvik too. I've also heard that there is an old haunted Dinena graveyard from the 1918 flu pandemic at the bluffs by the mouth of the Deshka River. If it weren't so inaccessible, it'd be interesting to check it out. There are supposed to be haunted lights and sounds and bad things there. Probably not a great place to camp. Someone else commented, I have never met one but have worked with people who have. Typically not good encounters. Someone else commented, I hallucinated a gnome crossing the road about 20 years ago on the drive down to Valdez. I swear I saw a little man in fur/skin clothes. He looked over his shoulder at me before going into the brush, left to right about 10 to 15 yards ahead on a bend. My wife heard me gasp and laughed at me and said that it was a fox multicolored. That does make more sense, but that's what he wants you to think. LOL. I'm pretty interested in little people. Have heard stories about them in Utah on the reservations. You saw the TikTok, didn't you? But anyways, those were just some comments on a thread about the Ircenrraat. I can't say it. If you slightly enjoyed this video and it was somewhat educational, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel because we post paranormal videos, shorts, and go live stream multiple times a week. Any other additions, Xenu?
Thank you, everybody. Peace and love.
Peace and love. Thanks for watching.